Bitcoin is dead. There is something fundamentally broken about it. This is the sentiment. Every bear market, I'm not actually saying Bitcoin is dead. I'm saying this is the sentiment. This is what happens every bear market in the depths of, oh no, there may be something actually wrong with Bitcoin. It is broken. It's going to zero. It's going to put in a lower low. And you've got to be able to identify that time and persevere through that moment. Now, one bit of encouragement, though, is every bear market, that sentiment is a little bit diminishing. In other words, the first time that Bitcoin ever truly had a bear market, before a large majority of people were in, including myself, I mean, there were actual just, oh my goodness, I just bought into Tulip Mania. And that was understandable at the time, where Bitcoin got up to over $30 and then it went down to $2. What asset would do something like that? So the idea that people would hold through that and have conviction that Bitcoin would be over $100,000, that really didn't make sense. But then each bear market, it got progressively less difficult. Now, it was still very difficult. There are two in particular that stick out to me, and I remember these, and I want to draw from these so that we have an understanding, because we are starting to hear this sentiment that Bitcoin's dead. We're starting to hear that. I don't know about you. I am starting to hear that there is a day of reckoning coming for Bitcoin. And whether or not that's true, you've got to understand this happens all the time. The ones that I remember that I want to draw from are 2018 going into 2019 and 2022. In 2018, it was a very dramatic flush out. It took about 5 weeks for Bitcoin to put in its bear market bottom from this point, about $6,000. It was hanging around $6,000 for what felt like forever. It was this nonstop monotony of Bitcoin. Just every day you would wake up and see it at $6,000. And then all of a sudden the floor came out in a major way. The miners capitulated. And then at that moment, the depths of despair with $3,000 Bitcoin in 2018, early 2019, there was a great deal of very high conviction of people either who were pro-Bitcoin throwing in the towel, or of those who were anti-Bitcoin running victory laps and saying, I remember this one tweet from somebody pretty significant in particular. He said that he was vindicated. He was talking negatively about Bitcoin from the peak in 2017, and that drop to $3,000 was his vindication. And of course, looking at it now, he has been proven wrong in every way. And so that was more difficult than 2022. 2022 was very difficult in some regards, except for the fact that we had the past history of every bear market. It just feels like we get to this moment of despair where it's like, oh man, something might actually be broken with Bitcoin. But 2022 was the outworking of incredible amounts of deleveraging that had to happen in the system, with, of course, Luna collapsing, the FTX collapse, all of that, BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager. And 2022, I remember some things about 2022. I remember somebody further on in time, in 2023, 2024, admitting that they sold at $17,000. Now, it wasn't the exact bottom, but it was close enough that, yeah, I actually, this person believed that it was done, that crypto was dead, and they sold at $17,000. And you may laugh at somebody like that right now, but I'm telling you, the pressure is always there in the bear market. It's not easy to buy, even in what in hindsight looks like an obvious time to buy. It's not easy. I remember going live in 2022 at that time at the bottom, and there was a struggle, even for me. There was a struggle to buy, even though on November 10th of 2022, I said, I'm bullish. There was a struggle to buy. And I remember wrestling through that with people in my live stream, because people were very loud saying that Bitcoin was going to go to $12,000, or other people were loud saying that Bitcoin's going to zero. And it's hard to get those voices out of your head and have the discipline to buy and just be okay. Maybe you buy the exact bottom, or maybe you buy a little bit higher than the bottom, but at some point you will get a return. And that return from the bottom was an 8x. And that return from $20,000 was a 6x, and so that was not easy. I remember friends texting me and needing some reassurance. Hey, Alex, do you still believe in Bitcoin? And my answer was yes. And one of my friends was like, okay, I'm going to DCA from now on. I'm going to buy $250. I think it's $250 a month, nothing huge, but he did. And from that point until the peak, he's gotten a return, and he's been DCAing the entire time, the entire way up, the entire way down. His cost average is well below where Bitcoin is right now. And cool, And so what am I saying? We're at that point. I'm not saying that we're at the absolute bottom with Bitcoin, but we are at a point where I am seeing sentiment. I'm seeing some. There's people who will never, it's not like the masses are going to convince themselves that Bitcoin is dead, but I'm seeing some people I respect, saying that the day of reckoning is coming, that Bitcoin and the rest of crypto have to go through, and this is the time that they will go through a period where expectations of Bitcoin going up forever will be met with some kind of harsh reality. There is a precedent for that. I mean, we saw that even with, in the dot-com bust with Amazon and with legitimate internet companies that were dragged down with the rest of those companies going to zero. So can it happen? It can. But this is the time when those voices are going to be loud, and you're going to be tempted to believe them. And what I would say is, until the trend is broken, it makes sense to stick with the status quo, that Bitcoin will continue to put in higher lows and higher highs in its dollar valuation over a period of cycles, over a period of multiple years. That hasn't been broken yet. And it makes sense until something changes to expect that happens. And it could change to the upside too. So what am I saying with all of this? I'm saying that, at the very least, not financial advice, you should be DCAing right now. I'm not a big believer in DCAing. Right now, I'm a believer in DCAing. I'm not a believer of DCAing when Bitcoin's in price discovery. And when other cryptos are in price discovery, that's nonsense to me. But now, when it's not easy, when the fear, this psychological, you've got to understand, I know major events happening right now in the world. There's always major events happening in the world. In 2022, there were major events happening in the world. And those major events, the way that some people are going to psychologize those events, it's going to mess with you and prevent you from buying at quite possibly the best time to buy. And I know it's not easy, but you got to block that noise out of your head. I know it's scary. I know Iran, United States, the war. Oh no, food supplies is going to get. At the end of the day, or at the end of the month, or at the end of the year, even that is just noise. And it makes sense to just block it out and buy the fear. It's always, in the history of markets, made sense to lean into that and buy the fear. Is this time different? We'll see. Probably not.